Internal consistency for a long-running series can be difficult to maintain. Over time, small details are forgotten and later contradicted. The author may want to go another direction and overlook a few things to make that happen. Reboots and reimaginations have become more and more common. As additional stories are told within a universe, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a literary homeostasis with what came before. Arguments may break out between fans about what is considered canon, each faction drawing a line and remaining steadfast on which version of the story should be taken as fact. Any little inconsistency can create a divide, a chasm in the world that by its very nature defies explanation. These are the things that the Dark Presence waits for, a black hole in the creation that can be manipulated to serve its own purpose. With the release of Alan Wake 2, there are a myriad of details that appear to contradict what came before. The nature and behavior of the Taken, the origin of the Dark Presence, and the function of the Clicker. The word retcon has been tossed around in relation to some details, but in this setting where reality can be malleable, where fiction warps history, we are left with the question, what was reality before any artist messed with it? What were the changes? It brings to mind the Mandela effect, everyone remembering things a little different. Norman does not remember the House of Zane being in Bright Falls, but here he is staying in the converted building now named Valhalla Nursing Home. Mandy May, however, remembers that it was always there. This is one of many examples of a sort of Mandela effect in the RCU, the origin of Thomas Zane being another, poet or filmmaker. These variances in reality, rather than being something the audience argues about, is something that the FBC should study. By now, a Mandela effect department seems appropriate. It's not a case of the characters misremembering something. Reality is actually different. In this setting, a retcon is not a mistake on behalf of the writers. A retcon takes on a new definition, an alteration to history or reality made by an artist by means of the Dark Place. With this definition, it becomes clear that in Alan Wake, retcons are canon. Functionally, this is as a result of two things, the Dark Place and after some narrative changes, the Clicker. In the Dark Place, fiction and reality cross paths. Fictional characters echo the lives of those on the other side. Separating what is real and what is fiction is the trick in this whole scenario. Knowing what is real, what is modified, and what is fiction. In order to help with this, I have divided stories and characters into three distinct categories. First is a person and reality. My definition here is these two things are the unfiltered version of a thing, a random individual that is not being influenced by a story from the Dark Place. Events that are not being manipulated by an artist or a dark presence. Sometimes it can be hard to distinguish if something is a certain way only because it is part of the story, or if it innately is that way. Anything that is not mentioned specifically on the manuscript page technically exists outside of the fiction, hence why the FBC considers these AWEs a localized distortion of reality, not a global event. A random accountant in Iowa has nothing to do with the plot of Initiation or Return, therefore they are just a person. Their day-to-day lives are reality. The second category are characters and the story. A character in this context is simply a person who is mentioned by the story and therefore becomes a character within it. We see throughout Alan Wake 2 that their actions are nudged. Their memory is altered to reflect the character. Their personality can be adjusted to fit what is on page. One good example is Ilmo Koskola. When Saga first meets him, he has no idea who she is. In this moment, he is a person. However, when she meets him in Watery, his memories are different. He remembers her living there. He has been changed into a character within the gap between these two scenes. The reason and methodology for this will be covered in a future video. The story would be a set of circumstances set in the real world, but are being actively manipulated by forces in the Dark Place. Simple enough. This brings us to Category 3, Actors and Fiction. A piece of fiction is set exclusively in the Dark Place and is only echoed into the story. The cult play, Agent Casey's investigation into the cult. These plot threads exist in the Dark Place and are not a one-to-one reflection of real events happening on the other side of the lake. Again, there are narrative echoes with the story, but the details are very different. For the purpose of this video and how some things are canonically retconned, I want to focus on the idea of an actor in this setting. Actors, at the end of the day, pretend to be someone else. They momentarily cease being themselves and play the role of a character, but they are not that character. We see this consistently throughout Alan's half of the story. While I will cover the Alex Casey investigation in full in a future video, I'll give some cliff notes now. Upon entering Caldera Street Station, Agent Casey follows a trail of blood where an FBI agent was abducted by the Cult of the Word. Following the story, we learn that this FBI agent was played by Agent Robert Nightingale. But we must keep in mind that the FBI agent in the Casey thriller is not Nightingale, just a random FBI agent. Nightingale, despite being a real person, has assumed the role of the FBI agent in the Casey narrative, therefore becoming an actor for the purposes of the plot. According to the walkie-talkie next to the train car, this fictional FBI agent had a partner being played by Agent Estevez. Of course, we know that in reality, this is not the case. Tammy Booker plays the role of a university professor. Ed Booker plays the role of a stage actor in the cult play. All of them are actors cast to play a character in a fictional story. As we can see, the relationship between all three categories are woven together in a confusing Venn diagram. The trick is to pull the diagram apart in a scene-by-scene basis to determine at what point these individuals transition between person, character, and actor. Once we do this, how the character changes becomes apparent. This brings us back to the subject of the video, the clicker and how it canonically retcons the story. What better example to use than the Dark Presence itself? In the first game, the Dark Presence is an ageless eldritch entity, existing in the Dark Place long before Alan's and most likely humanity's first work of art. But in the sequel, it is a demon created from Alan's own psyche, formed by the cavity left by the Bullet of Light. It may seem like a huge contradiction and retcon to go from it existing before Alan's first work of art to being created by one of his works of art. But it's not. Canonically, it makes perfect sense if we treat them as two different characters being played by the same actor. The Dark Presence is an ageless entity, but within stories, it is cast as an actor to play a character. In the first game, it was cast to play the role of the Scratching Hag, Barbara Jagger, a character who was Thomas Zane's dead girlfriend resurrected back from the dead and returned with darkness inside. In Alan Wake 2, the Dark Presence was cast to play the role of Mr. Scratch. The character's backstory is that it was created by the Bolt of Light. But remember, the actor is not the character. It is its own thing, playing the role of something else. Therefore, the difference between the two games is not a retcon. Yet. It can become one, however, with the help of the clicker. In the past, when the story is over with, the characters become people again, going about their lives and are no longer being influenced by the story. The actors take off their masks and become people again as well. Once the story is over, that's it. This paranatural object has the ability to force the story to become permanent, no longer a piece of fiction. As a result, any actor playing a role will be retconned to become that character in perpetuity, becoming a method actor, so to speak. The mask becoming their identity. In this sense, the retcons became canon because of the clicker. This leaves us with only one remaining question. When Mr. Scratch flipped the switch on the eve of Deerfest, was he acting out of his own design, or was he falling into a trap laid for him by someone else? Find out next time when I give my ending analysis of Alan Wake 2. See you then. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to receive updates on future uploads. If you would like to help support the channel, a Patreon has been set up and the link is in the description below. Have a great day and peace be with you all.